one. Oh, the UFC, it's boring. There's no big fights anymore. They don't announce any good fights anymore. I don't want to be a UFC fan anymore. They don't take anything serious. Shut your crying baby ass up, man. Dana White and the UFC woke up last night, and they said, you know what, man? It's about time that we lay down the law and give the people what they want, and they announced some massive fights all over the place. They were just chaotic with it. They're just like, look, Dana's like, I need to go out here and make an announcement, and it's not going to be very organized. We're just going to announce all sorts of shit, which is exactly what they did. We have a lot of news to unfold in this video, and that starts with this right here. Alexander Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes for the featherweight title. Now, two things are interesting about this image. Number one, God damn, did they do Volkanovski dirty, man. Why the hell did they use his last-minute step-in photo when he had to come off the couch and fight Islam Makhachev in a rematch that they should have never have wasted at that time? But they used Volk's out-of-shape pick, dog. Like, the disrespect here towards Volkanovski. But in all seriousness, this is an unbelievable matchup right here. I thought that the UFC was going to go this route where we were going to get Volkanovski versus either Diego Lopes or Movsar Evloev. My concern for Movsar, as much as I want to see him fight for the title, the excitement factor. The excitement factor, that clearly goes to Diego Lopes, especially after going out there at the Sphere and battering around Brian Ortega for 15 minutes. So, having said all of that, this is a damn good fight, but we still have another problem. This is for the world featherweight title, so I don't know how anyone could have possibly have predicted that Ilia Topuria is going to move up to 155 pounds, and he has his sights and his crosshairs on Islam Makhachev. But listen to this, man. I told you guys this before. Look, Ilia Topuria, I feel like I can just read this guy's mind at this point. Look, I sat up here and I told you, I broke down one of his recent interviews when he was on Full Send podcast, and I said, this is weird that Ilia is doing this episode right now, right? Because normally Full Send does these podcast episodes whenever it's close to a fight or maybe we're getting some big news. And this dude out there, he's just like, look, man, if I got to go up and fight a top contender to get a shot at Islam, I will go ahead and do that. Or I have no problem, obviously, walking into a title shot against Islam Makhachev. However, it doesn't sound like we are going to be getting that, right? Because here, we're hearing from Rizvan Magomedov, and he is saying, look, man, Topuria needs to prove he's a legit lightweight before fighting Islam, okay? And then here is his tweet right here. Topuria versus Dustin/Charles, contender fight to prove he's a legit lightweight, so we don't have to defeat another small featherweight. We need a big fight that makes sense for everyone. We already gave chances to featherweight champ that was reigning for a long time. Now, I completely understand where Team Islam is coming from, right? And this is, as much as I want the Ilia Topuria versus Islam Makhachev fight, I do believe that there is a chance that we could get this right away. But I feel like they would have announced it right. They would have just came out the gate and they would have been like, Dana, you know how Dana is, man. He can't wait to tell you that he has the biggest, best fight booked. And they don't necessarily have that. And giving the stance of Islam Makhachev, I do believe that we are going to have to see Ilia fight a top contender first, right? But that leads to a couple of different interesting things. We have this from Ariel Hawani, who says Islam versus Ilia Topuria planned for as early as June. Let's listen to Dana, what he had to say about when Ilia Topuria moved up, because this is also interesting.
It's felt like he's done all that he can in that division, and he feels like he's cemented his legacy, and his body cannot make the weight anymore. So Topuria will be moving up to 155 pounds and will be vacating the featherweight titles. Topuria.
Okay. So Ilia Topuria, the weight cut, he mentioned this before. His coach mentioned it in an interview, I believe it was Submission Radio, to where he said Ilia's a big guy outside of camp. And I always sit up here and I say, look, Ilia Topuria, he's a big dude. And people go, Jake, you're a fucking idiot. Ilia Topuria, he's not a big guy. He's small. He's a midget. Ilia Topuria may not be the tallest guy in the world, but in terms of his build, he is a stout dude, man. Like, he is a stout dude, and I recently saw him hitting pads recently, and he looked big, man. He looked big, and I know he's a shorter guy and this and that, but in terms of his stature, he is a solidly built guy. I don't think he will be a big guy at 55, but to say that he is undersized at 55, I don't believe that that is the correct assumption. So either way, Ilia Topuria has vacated the title officially. He is moving up to 155 pounds, as I predicted. I said that I had a feeling that this was going to happen because, yes, there are some dangerous contenders on the rise, but this guy, after going out there, he's undefeated at this point, goes out there against Volkanovski, KOs him, said he was going to do it, goes out there, does it, goes out there, said he was going to KO Max Holloway, which I told you guys. I picked Holloway to go out there and finish Justin Gaethje, which again, got kind of lucky because it was in the last 10 seconds, but either way, I picked Holloway to stunt on Gaethje, and I said, look, man, I'm a big Holloway fan, but this dude, Topuria, he's the hitman that was created to take out our favorite fighters. He's going to KO Max Holloway, and he is the first person to be able to do that. And for some reason, people act like that's not a big deal. They make all these excuses of why he knocked out Holloway. Oh, the weight cut for Max. Max Holloway looked really good in that fight, man. He looked really, really good in that fight, and he was coming off of one of the best performances, if not the best of his career, by absolutely picking apart Justin Gaethje at UFC 300 when the BMF title was on the line. So don't tell me that that was some BS win on the side of Ilia Topuria. This guy has been absolutely sensational since he has came into the UFC. And Islam Makhachev, I am a massive fan of him. I am a fan of Ilia Topuria. That is a fight that I absolutely want to see. However, I don't believe that we get it next. I think that we are looking at Ilia Topuria versus, maybe Charles Oliveira, maybe Arman Tsarukyan, but I believe that Dustin Poirier is a legit option. Poirier's talking about retirement. He's talking about all these different things. So who's a game opponent, right? Poirier's having, the motto legends only, which I absolutely love because considering what he has done, he wants a big name. What's going to motivate Dustin Poirier more than to go out there and be a guy who could possibly give Ilia his first L? And I can already see the buildup here. This is the boxing exchanges in a fight between Ilia and Dustin Poirier would feed families. It would feed generations, man. That would be an unbelievable fight. And again, I could see it happening because the UFC, as much as they like the guys that come in and pave the way for the sport, they still will feed you to a name that they are also trying to build. So I see multiple angles. It's a game opponent that Topuria, very much respects Poirier. Poirier very much respects Ilia. What a banger of a fight that would be between Ilia and Dustin Poirier. But I also see Charles Oliveira as an option, right? Topuria said that that is a fight that would interest him. So I see all sorts of options at 155 right now. Of course, I really want the Islam fight, but I think that we are going to see Ilia fight someone first before getting the title shot, especially since he vacated the belt, which I thought he was going to do. It's like shades of when Brady came over into the UFC from Glory. He's like, I'm going to hunt down Adesanya. It feels like we're getting this, like he's going on a hunt here to chase Islam, Makhachev. And again, Ilia going up to 55 clears the avenue at 145 for a potential move up from Merab Dvalishvili, which then allows Alexandre Topuria, Ilia's brother, to make his run at bantamweight. So the Georgians, man, they are figuring this thing out. This is absolutely massive. And again, got to pat myself on the back because I predicted that Ilia was going to vacate the title and chase legacy and move up and go about his business. But we got to talk about these fights first. We got to talk about these fights, or not first, but we got to talk about these fights now. This is a massive fight here at 145 between Alexander Volkanovski and Diego Lopes, and this is one that I've talked about before. Look, man, this is a very dangerous but very winnable fight for Volk, dude. This is a very winnable fight for Volk because Diego is a very dangerous guy. Don't get me wrong, he's got big power in his hands. His boxing is very much improving, but he's not the most technical guy. And I know people are already going to jump on it and be like, well, Topuria's got power in his hands, and you saw what he did to Volk. Topuria is much cleaner when it comes to the striking than Diego. Diego tends to get a little reckless, tends to get a little wild, although if he lands, he can absolutely shut your lights out. I mean, we've never seen Brian Ortega, we've seen him take a beating, but when Diego hit him with that right hand and then that left uppercut, he basically knocked Ortega out with the right hook and then woke his ass up with the left uppercut. So if it wasn't for that shot, I think he actually would have knocked out Brian Ortega. So he literally did himself not a favor by landing that extra
extra shot, which was crazy. I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen that clip. It was absolutely, mind-blowing to me when Ortega basically was going out, and as he was falling, Lopes hit him with the uppercut and woke him back up. But either way, Diego's dangerous. He's a fast starter, gets in your face, presses the action, comes right after you. And not only is it the striking that he's been going after people with, but he has very, very, very dangerous jiu-jitsu. He has a very, very wickedly good ground game. And that is something that kind of had me wondering if this was going to be next, because Volkanovski was dropping those vlogs, and on social media, Aljamain Sterling's posting, they're training together over in Thailand. And I'm like, you're training with Aljo? He's also at featherweight. Well, what could that mean? You're preparing for the grappling. Craig Jones is over there training with them, and we know when Craig Jones comes in, I mean, I know he's always working with Volk these days, that is when they are anticipating a very dangerous grappler. This is an outstanding matchup. I think early on, Diego is very dangerous, but we have seen him in all of his fights, basically. As the fight plays out, as it starts to progress, if you can make it through the early onslaught, you can take advantage of this guy. And I believe that if Alexander Volkanovski can stick and move, play at range, stay defensively responsible, and not get caught with a big shot or not get taken down and subbed, which again, hard to do. We saw Ortega put Volk in a submission. I'm like, I still don't know how Volk got out of it to this day. But he's damn good with his submission defense, man. You can never sleep on Alexander Volkanovski. And how great is this? Volk can come back, and in the lighter weight classes, nobody wins a title at the age that Volk's at, man. Nobody does it. He has the opportunity to add to his already Hall of Fame career. This would be a monumental victory for Alexander Volkanovski. I absolutely think he could get it done. I'm not giving a prediction yet, but I'm leaning towards Volk, man. I got to be honest, and I said this before, I feel like Lopes is a pretty good matchup for Volkanovski. I know he's dangerous, don't get me wrong, but as the fight plays out, we see Lopes slow down. We saw against Dan Ige. Now, I know that there were some circumstances there because it was a last-minute replacement with Ige and all the different weights. Lopes didn't know who the hell he was fighting come fight night, so a little bit of an asterisk there, but we have seen him slow down. So if he does not get Volk out of there early, I absolutely can see the veteran and craftiness of, Alexander Volkanovski taking over and finding a way to pick his shots, stick and move, and win the fight. And then, this isn't UFC Miami, UFC 314. So anytime they go, to Florida, man, because of the whole pandemic thing and Florida being so open to host UFC events, Dana White is, he loves Florida, man. He's made that very vocal. So that is why another reason they always load up the cards. But of course, they're going to sell this thing out and it's going to be a big deal. And then the co-main, we got a 5-rounder between Michael Chandler and Paddy Pimblett. This is a good fight, man. This is a really good fight because Paddy Pimblett, he's getting the biggest opportunity of his career. He goes out there against Bobby Green, shows that he has high-level fight IQ when he chooses to, right? Because we've seen Paddy at times stand at range, stand on the feet a little too long when I feel like he should try to get to the grappling. But we saw that against Bobby. He just didn't stand in front of him and try to have, a back and forth, a battle with Green on the feet. He mixed in the grappling, took it into his strengths, and put on a very impressive performance against Bobby Green. And what we're seeing from Paddy is a guy that is coming into his own. And he's getting the big name and Michael Chandler, who is one of those guys that every time he steps in there, you can say whatever you want about Chandler, dog. He's going to deliver. It's going to be a fun fight. It's going to be entertaining. And Michael Chandler, while he's getting older, while he has been, since he's been in the UFC, he's, been given opportunities that maybe he shouldn't be getting, considering he's lost more than he's won in the UFC. But he's dangerous, man. Michael Chandler is very dangerous. He's got big power. He's wild in there. And he is a guy that if he lands, he can absolutely put you out. We saw him do it to Tony Ferguson, which, again, that's Tony Ferguson at this point, towards the end of his career, went out there and starched Dan Hooker. This guy has power, man. He has some devastating power. And Paddy Pimblett, he sticks his chin in the air, doesn't have good striking defense. So I absolutely see a scenario to where Michael Chandler could knock his ass out. But if Paddy approaches it smart and watches kind of what Charles Oliveira did to Michael Chandler in the most recent outing, I think Paddy can find success. Mix in the grappling, look to get to the, look to get the fight to the floor, utilize your jiu-jitsu, because Paddy, you can say what you want about the guy, whether you like him or not, he has outstanding jiu-jitsu, man. Very, very high-level jiu-jitsu. So if he gets to fight to the floor, I could absolutely see him doing very well against Michael Chandler. But in terms of on the feet, we know Chandler's reckless. We know he's wild. You just never can really trust the game planning of Michael Chandler. If he can let the hands go on the feet and he lands on Paddy Pimblett, I absolutely think Chandler can win this fight. However, I would lean towards Paddy Pimblett at this time, man. We see this, the veterans, they've been around for a while. Chandler's getting up there in age. Wow. He takes very good care of his body, though. Takes very good care of his body, so he doesn't age like other fighters, right? And against Oliveira, he had a very, very good 5th round. So I think Michael Chandler still has gas left in the tank, but his fight IQ is always something to question, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. This is a banger of a co-main event, and the rest of the card at UFC 314 is absolutely loaded. I mean, we just went over the main and co-main, but in the featured fight, we have Yair Rodriguez versus the new toy in the UFC, Patricio Pitbull, coming over from Bellator/PFL. Now, a lot of you out there may not be super into Bellator/PFL, but when Bellator was really hitting its stride, one of the faces of the organization at featherweight and then went up at, to lightweight to KO Michael Chandler was Patricio Pitbull. And a lot of that motivation was Chandler starched his brother Patricky with a beautiful right hand. Patricio's like, I'm going to fight you. Goes up and was able to win a second belt. So this dude, Patricio, man, he's getting up there in age. He's definitely not in his prime anymore, but he is still a very, very good fighter. Kind of has that Henry Cejudo karate-like style. He's got a very good overhand right. He's got some solid grappling. But I feel like this is a horrible matchup for him, man. Yair Rodriguez, while he has shown that he could be taken down and controlled, Yair is lightning fast on the feet, and I think that he is probably easily the best striker that Patricio has ever faced. I mean, on the feet, Yair will absolutely tune Patricio up like a new guitar. I mean, Patricio, I think, is going to be diving for the legs in this fight, looking to grapple, looking to control Yair. So if Yair comes into this, again, you have to remember, Yair has pretty good submissions as well. So I think that if he can find a way to not just get controlled on the ground, he can absolutely outland and pick Patricio apart. I honestly see a situation to where Rodriguez beats the shit out of him, right? And I think that this is one of those things where, Patricio's a little older. He's a guy that really wanted to be let go from the PFL, wanted to go into the UFC and show us what he's about. Sink or swim, man. UFC's like sink or swim. You're a big name, and then if Yair goes out there and shows levels, we're the UFC. You're the outsider here. We have seen scenarios though. Chandler comes over, KO's Hooker in his debut. MVP comes over and doesn't KO, but beats the shit out of Kevin Holland. We've seen when the new toy comes into the UFC, they can make some waves. But I think Yair Rodriguez, very, very dangerous opponent. As long as he can keep the fight standing and doesn't spend too much time on the ground, I absolutely think that he beats the shit out of Patricio Pitbull. But then again here, welterweight division, Jeff Neal versus Carlos Prates, man. What a fight this is. What an absolute banger this is because Jeff Neal, I talk about Jeff Neal all the time. I'm like, he's got that rhythm where it looks like he's kind of dancing in there. He's got that good high guard defense. He's so relaxed, smooth footwork, man. I love watching Jeff Neal fight. And Jeff Neal is, I don't want to say he's the gatekeeper, right? He's not a gatekeeper, but he's that guy who still can find some wins while protecting his rank, while not moving up too far, not moving back too far, just kind of sits right at that number 10 spot, defends it well. And then he takes on a new guy, and we get to see the new guy get tested. And I absolutely believe in this fight that he is going to test Carlos Prates. But if I'm Jeff Neal, this is a fight that I'm looking to make boring. I'm looking to go out there, smother Prates up against the fence, take away some of the explosiveness, because on the feet now out in space, Carlos is one of the most dangerous guys at 170 pounds right now. He absolutely is. Has lightning fast hand speed, very dangerous Muay Thai technique, and he has legit one-shot knockout power to where I think he can put anybody out in this division if he lands clean. But Jeff Neal is the real test, man. Jeff Neal is the real test because he's coming off of a win over Rafael Dos Anjos to where we see Jeff show up, and sometimes he looks like a world beater. Other times he just doesn't look like himself in there, but he's going in there against a dangerous contender to where a Prates could go out there, especially even if he can win, that would be huge. But if he finishes Neal, dude, like that would absolutely validate just how damn good Carlos Prates is. But I think Jeff is a very good test for him, man, because Jeff has excellent boxing, very good movement, good high guard defense. He rolls with shots really well. This is a very, very fun fight. But again, Carlos seems like the next level, man. That new generation of MMA fighters, especially coming out of the Fighting Nerds camp, to where his ground game is improved. He has decent grappling, and his Muay Thai, in particular on the feet, is very, very high level. Dangerous power. You have to constantly be worried at all times on the feet with this guy. I think Prates is able to get that one done. And then Nikita Krylov versus Dominic Reyes. I mean, it's great that we have Nikita Krylov coming back. It's been forever since we've seen him fight. And it's been like a feel-good story, right? Dominic Reyes, it was like, I felt like we might never see Dominic Reyes fight again, right? Because he went on that long skid of he kept getting KO'd. And I'm like, how long is he going to keep this going, man? Because you keep getting KO'd like that. It's just not good, and you're getting KO'd by Ryan Spann, and I'm just like, this is not good. And then he goes out there and puts on 2 back-to-back performances, a great one against Dustin Jacoby, a solid one against Anthony Smith, and he's back into the rankings, just outside the number 10 spot, and he gets himself a high-level opponent in Krylov, who's been out for a period of time. So what does Nikita look like when he comes back is going to be the question. But I think the grappling and how basic Dominic Reyes is going to be a problem. I think Nikita's grappling is very, very good. I think that he will find success with that against Dominic Reyes. And I think while Reyes is good on the feet, he's got fast hands, he's got a good rear kick, he's got a really, 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 really good straight left hand, it's just not enough to take out Krylov, man. I don't think it's enough. But again, Dominic Reyes, he's been on this feel-good tour, man. He's racked up a couple wins here. He's feeling himself. Very, very hard matchup here. And considering the long layup from Krylov, what does he look like? Those are going to be things to watch. And then Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. Love this fight, man. Absolutely love this fight because Dan Ige is an absolute savage. He'll fight anytime, anywhere, any place. He proved that by stepping in on, a couple hours notice to fight Diego Lopes, which that was absolutely crazy. I don't even know if we'll see something like that again. That was absolutely madness. Against Sean Woodson. Sean Woodson, he's one of those guys. I love watching Sean Woodson fight. He's really, really tall for the weight class. Has one of the weirdest builds that we've ever seen in the lighter weight classes, but he has a very tricky, slick style on the feet. He's got solid boxing, he's got some decent kicks, and he is a hard guy to take down, man. He's a hard guy to take down, and if you do take him down, he works back up to his feet very, very well, utilizes the fence very, very well to aid against the takedowns. So tricky matchup here. Tricky matchup for Dan Ige, tricky matchup for Sean Woodson because Dan has very, very good grappling as well that we don't always get to see him use, but he does have it. And he has legit power in his hands. So that's going to be something to watch, but big opportunity for Sean Woodson. I really, really like watching him fight. He's got his own unique style. It's like he's playing basketball out there. He's got a great rhythm. That's an absolute banger. Yan Xiaonan versus Virna Jandiroba. It was a matter of time before we saw Jandiroba get that big opportunity here in the strawweight division against Yan Xiaonan. I think that that's a very competitive fight there. And Jim Miller versus Chase Hooper. I just feel bad here for Jim Miller because it's like, look, this is an OG. This is a legend here, and we just keep feeding all these old legends to Chase Hooper, and I feel like Chase is a guy now that we should be getting into. I'm not saying necessarily ranked competition, but guys that aren't way out of their prime at this point. Give Jim Miller more of an OG type of matchup. That's how I feel with Jim Miller here. And having said all that, I see Jim getting subbed here. Chase Hooper has outstanding submissions. His striking is really improving. He's a tall, rangy guy for the weight class. I think Chase Hooper is a serious nightmare for anybody right now. So that's a difficult fight for Jim Miller. And then here on the prelims, we have The Damage, Darren Elkins. I can't even believe he's still fighting anymore. Cedricus Dumas versus Mikhail Olazechuk. That's a pretty solid fight. Not bad there for UFC 314. But we got a few more things to discuss, man. And that is this right here. Belal Muhammad versus Jack Della Maddalena. This came out of nowhere, man. This came out of nowhere, and I saw JDM pull out of a fight, and I'm like, no, man, not another injury for JDM. I'm like, and then considering that would be a pull out of this fight, I'm like, what are they going to do? Are they going to punish Jack? Are they going to make him, fight a couple more fights before getting a title opportunity because he was supposed to fight Leon Edwards, in London? And now Shavkat Rakhmonov, I believe, is injured, so enter JDM going in there against Belal. This is an unbelievable matchup right here. I honestly like this fight better than the Shavkat fight. And I know Shavkat, he earned it. He went out there, fought Ian Gary, won over, beat Ian Gary, that was a great fight there. And he absolutely earned himself a title shot after, beating Ian Gary. Before the Ian Gary fight, it was supposed to be Belal versus Shavkat. And we were like, we don't really have anyone that we could justify for a title. Shavkat's undefeated. He was just kind of the guy that made sense there. But JDM goes out there. He's losing to Gilbert Burns, finds that knee and is able to get him out of there. But this fight to me is very straightforward. Belal's boxing has gotten way, way, way better over his past few fights. We saw that on display at UFC 304 against Leon Edwards, to where not only has Belal gotten so much better with the boxing, but it's the pressure, it's the wrestling, and the gas tank, and the way that he just mixes everything together, keeps you guessing, and just makes you fight at this such high pace. I think Jack is really, really going to struggle against Belal in this fight. And I absolutely believe that JDM has the boxing and absolutely has the power to get Muhammad out of there, but I just don't see it happening, man, because Belal is very durable. He's a guy that has very good high fight IQ. He knows how to go in there and take his, impose his dominance on the guys. Like, he's not just going to go in there and stand in front of JDM for 25 minutes. He's going to mix in the wrestling. He's going to keep him guessing. And I think that he's going to do that because we've seen Jack get taken down and controlled by Gilbert Burns. We've seen him get taken down and controlled throughout his rise in the UFC. We saw it against Hafez, which was a truly shocking performance because everyone was so high on JDM. And to see him get taken down and struggle like that was definitely an eye-opener. So if he has not, even if he has improved his takedown defense, it's not going to be enough to stop the onslaught and the pressure that Belal is going to bring. I have Belal Muhammad winning this fight. I'm not going to change my mind on that. I think that Jack has good boxing. He has good power. But Belal, I think his striking has improved enough to where he can stand with Jack, even though that's not the best idea because Maddalena definitely has more power and he's a little bit slicker. But I think Belal has gotten much better on the feet to where this fight is very, very interesting. But the wrestling, JDM's just going to struggle, man. He's just going to struggle. And then we have Valentina Shevchenko versus Manon Fiorot. This is an interesting fight because with Fiorot, she has very, very good grappling. She's someone that's kind of been chomping at the bit to get her title opportunity. Enter her versus Valentina Shevchenko. This is an interesting matchup because I'm just curious, how does Manon, if she cannot get to the grappling, because we have seen those improvements in Shevchenko's game, how does she, if she gets stuck on the feet, how does she deal with Valentina? Because Valentina is one of the best women strikers of all time. She's really well-rounded out her game. This is a banger matchup right here, for women's MMA in terms of the X's and O's and how this lines up. I don't think it's going to be that exciting because I think that we are going to see Fiorot to press the action, try to turn this into a grappling match. But if it's kept on the feet, Valentina, I think, absolutely picks her apart. And the winner, to me, would probably be getting the Zhang Weili matchup. So I think the UFC is probably rooting for Valentina in this, hoping that she gets it done. But it's very, very good that they put Belal versus JDM as the main event on 315, because if it wasn't, we were probably going to get this. And so that it's a good thing that this is happening. And then we have Alexa Grasso versus Natalia Silva, I believe, on that card. So some decent fights on that card. And then last but not least, Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. So at first I was like, man, what's going on here with JDM? I'm like, that fight fell apart. Who's going to step in for Leon Edwards? And the guy that I always kept, thinking and thought that the UFC was originally going to book for this matchup against Leon was Sean Brady. And I always had said, if the UFC books Sean Brady versus Leon, I feel like the UFC is basically going, fuck Leon Edwards, man. Fuck him. Let's give him a terrible matchup in Sean Brady. But to be honest, man, I really think Leon can win this fight. I really think he can win this fight because Sean does have good grappling. He has good wrestling. He's got really good submissions. He's got a very good ground game. But I don't know that on the feet and style-wise, he poses the same kind of threat that a guy like Belal presents, right? Because we saw what Muhammad did to Sean Brady. It was the pressure style that gave Brady problems. It's the pressure style that gives Leon problems. Sean isn't much of a pressure guy. I know he tries to back you up and get to the takedowns, but does he have that relentless style that gives Leon problems? Because one of Leon's biggest issues he sits on the back foot, sits there and, does what we would call takes pictures. He sees what's going on and he's very technical getting out of the way, but he just doesn't let his hands go enough. He doesn't let the kicks go enough. And he's a super well-rounded technical fighter, but he just is too reserved, man. He's too reserved, and I call him back foot Leon at this point because he sits on the back foot, doesn't do enough, and just is okay picking and coasting, to barely winning a fight at times. So I think that this time around, if he can keep the fight on the feet and not allow Sean to just crash him up against the fence, take him down, hold him down, and play that kind of game, I could absolutely see a scenario to where Leon can pick and poke at him and pick him apart, because I think he's a much better overall fighter in terms of the striking, and I do think Leon has a very underrated ground game. But I think that the style that Sean brings to the table just seems kind of like a nightmare for Leon, man. And again, we hear Paul Felder and these guys up in Philly talk about the strength of Sean Brady when it comes to the grappling and the physicality. So I think that if we saw Belal implement a game plan like that, if Brady can do something similar, I think that he can have a similar success. However, he doesn't have as good of boxing or as good of striking that Muhammad has. So again, just going off of the styles that we've seen, I think it's a very hard fight for Leon. I also think that it's a tricky fight for Sean Brady. Good matchup either way, but man, the UFC is back, man. They finally announced some massive fights. We get to see Volk, possibly win a title again, man. Like, it feels good, man. It feels good. Volkanovski going out there winning a title again. The fan base would absolutely love that. I know, because I feel like we're all Volkanovski fans. So either way, UFC, Dana White absolutely cooked with these fight announcements. Going to be interesting to see what happens with Ilia Topuria moving forward. But if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Comment your thoughts down below, what you think of these announcements from Dana and the UFC. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I would appreciate it. See you next time.